Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Indus, Khaitan, and Lori Harmon from Quolum.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon. You had your coffee? I need one. We've been standing for the last 2.5 days, but glad to see all of you here. My name is Indus Khaitan. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Quolum. We help companies reduce their spend on SaaS. I have my guest here, Lori Harmon. We'll let Lori introduce herself.
Thanks, Indus. I'm Lori Harmon. I'm the global head of business development at Cloudflare. And prior to that, I ran a $1 billion renewal business and a global customer success team at NetApp. So I'm very familiar with the issues surrounding churn.
Fantastic. So when Lori and I started chatting, we had 10 mistakes to avoid to prevent churn. We thought of doing a 10 slider. And then we were told, hey, you don't have time, only 4. So we compressed everything we know in 4 slides. So we'll take it away. So Lori, the churn is very real. Customers leave for all sorts of reasons, and sales teams are troubled. Customer success is not happy. Tell us a little bit more about why this is happening.
Well, it happens for, we're going to tell about our 4 reasons, but one of the reasons churn is real is because if your churn is high, your sales team can't outsell it with new business. So it starts to negatively impact your revenue. Plus, it can impact your brand. Those customers that are leaving can start saying things on social media. So it can be very bad for your brand, it can be bad for your revenue and your reputation.
Fantastic. And we know that the churn typically happens during the start of the sales cycle. After it, when do you come to know about it?
Well, I guess I look at churn as being customer churn, right? Obviously, you have deals fall out in your sales cycle, but churn is really when you have a customer and they decide not to renew their subscription. So that is real churn.
Cool. So let's go over the 4 things that we talked about earlier in terms of how to avoid churn, and then we'll see the symptoms of those 4.
Sounds good. We only got 8 minutes, so we gotta go.
All right. 2 minutes for each one. Let's go. So how do we avoid these 4? So let's talk about the first one that you mentioned, overestimating sales. What are some of the symptoms of sales-related churn that shows up later?
Well, some of the things I've seen with sales, especially if maybe your company was around like before SaaS was a thing and you were coming off of hardware or on-premise software and you're trying to transition to SaaS, or maybe you have bundles with SaaS. And so your sales comp plan is so important because I'm looking at it from the sales side, right? If your sales comp plan isn't driving the right behavior, what could happen is your sellers obviously have to make their quota, right? So they're selling this bundle, or maybe they're used to selling hardware, on-premise software, and they're getting the SaaS in there, but maybe they haven't sold the value of that particular product. So when your customer success team goes to try to activate and onboard and get your customers to adopt that, they may go, I didn't even know that I had this, or this isn't what I bought. They're not really ready. And so maybe you get your initial sale and you've got that value right, but then you're going to overestimate your renewals.
So some of the things that you mentioned on the sales overestimation, is it the size of the deal is the typical one that you thought, hey, this is a $100,000 customer, but you actually sold them much more? That's the biggest one, right?
That is definitely so. You could sell them like the whole bundle, but maybe if they haven't been sold on the value of each element, it starts out as $100,000, and maybe that's what they buy to start, but next year they renew at $50,000. So the renewal is what comes in lower.
Much, much lower. Let's talk about the next one. Ignoring customers.
Absolutely.
That's a big one, right? You just build a product and add features and never talk to customers. Is that the one?
You can't throw products over the fence, right? From the very beginning, it's really important to design in functionality that makes it easy to activate, easy to onboard, and easy to adopt. So build user guides into your product so the customer can find out what, hey, I can't figure this out. They can find it very easily with the user guide. Give them the ability to be able to give you input on your product in the product. So instead of them going out and sending email or maybe forgetting to tell you, if that ability is in the product, your engineers and your product managers are going to see that and decide how to react to it. So you have immediate feedback. And if your product's really hot, give them the ability to upgrade, add capacity right in the product. Why do they need to talk to a salesperson again? Let's just do more now, right? Hallelujah. That's fantastic. And finally, one more thing, Indus. don't just think about the customer. Think about your customer success team. Make sure there's a way to look at the feature utilization in your product. So if they're not using all the features, they're not getting all the value. And your customer success team can work with them to use more of the features if they can tell what's being used and what's not. Over to you.
So earlier, I remember, Lori, when we were chatting, you talked about the importance of training. How big deal it is for training existing customers, because most of the time the focus is, hey, I'm bringing new customers in, spend time onboarding. Can you deep dive a little bit more on training existing customers?
Sure. Well, I think ongoing training is really important. I mean, ideally, the product's so easy you don't have to, but I know that every product can't be that easy. So you have to make training available for your customers. And you can't just drop them the first time, because your customers are going to have turnover. They're going to be bringing in new people. They might not use a feature every day, so they might forget how to use it. So it's definitely something that you have to continue doing. Continue to offer that as a service.
Super. Let's go to the next one. Involuntary churn.
Are you going to talk about that first? Or you want me to talk about it first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, with involuntary churn, it's churn you may not know about. So what if your customers are paying on credit card, but the credit card gets denied? You know, we've all had fraud in our credit cards, and then you go and hopefully you get a notice that something you really want to keep didn't go through. But what if that's broken? I've been in companies where they set up automated processes, which is the right thing to do, but then something else changes at the company and that link breaks, or the integration with some other app breaks. You don't know it. So you've got to spot check some of these automated processes to make sure that if you're auto renewing, or if you're charging credit cards, things like that, or if your collections process, it all has to be working. So if you think it's automated, make sure you're spot checking it. If it's not automated, automate it.
Absolutely. And many of you, let's say, if you have a Stripe dashboard for automating collections and payments, look at those numbers. You'll be surprised how many credit card failures are there. And even more than that, your collections process, if customers are not paying for whatever reason, have an offline and online process to bring that money back in. So I think involuntary churn is the easiest to fix, is it?
I think these are all big challenges, but yes, that should be the easiest one.
Fix.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's move to the next one.
This is my favorite one, metrics that matter. So to me, this is the number one mistake, but you have to have all three working before you can actually get the input for the metrics, right? If you're not tracking customer satisfaction, retention, product usage and engagement, and also the financials around that to measure churn, how are you going to know if your churn is getting worse or if it's getting better? And how will you know how to improve it without the metrics? So data and insights is absolutely imperative to prevent churn.
I think we talk about these metrics quite a bit, but still the CSAT scores, the NPS are not collected. Is it lack of tools or lack of processes?
Well, I think it could be a couple things. It could be processes, it could be tools, or maybe people don't realize how important it is. Maybe they're not willing to make the investment to do that. But that's a critical investment, especially for SaaS companies, because it's all about not having churn and minimizing your churn. So it's really worth the investment, and the ROI is going to be based on reducing that churn or minimizing that churn. So you can justify investing in the tools to get there and then having it automated.
Fantastic. So those were the four, Lori. How do we make all of these actionable to our audience?
Well, basically, I think there's a few things you can do. So when it comes to sales, make sure you have a deal desk, right? Make sure they're monitoring. Are we selling to our ICP? Are we selling to the right customers? What's the onboarding and adoption rate? Again, if you're not getting customers onboarded and they don't adopt, you're not going to get that renewal. I already mentioned auditing your payment structure. So that's the spot checks. Because if it's not working and you aren't charging those credit cards or automating those renewals, people just may go away and you've lost them and you didn't even know about it. Make sure you create a dashboard for all of your metrics so you can see in an instant and check the dashboard. Don't just let it sit out there. You've got to go and actually look at it to see what the trends are with churn. And, of course, market to your customers, making sure they're engaged. They know about the new functionality and how that can bring value to them based on what they've bought. And then, of course, looking at feature usage. I already said if they're not using the features, they're not getting value, they're not going to renew.
Super. We are at the 10th minute, Lori.
Yes.
Where do people find you?
Oh, well, people can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm also, LinkedIn, they also can find me through my book. And I do want to say real quick that basically if you follow and don't make these 4 mistakes, then you might have other problems. But as my shirt says that I got here at SaaStr, it says, churn will not be your problem.
All right. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Indus.
And thank you.
Thank you.